I would love to go to this one. Oh, he's my favorite, next to Thomas Jefferson.
Okay. We're going to get started. And we have a nice selection of cast members for you today. And we have Colorado Springs. This lady has appeared in Colorado Springs video that was shot there as herself, but she's also been a Knoxville reenactor. And then everyone else have been in the Knoxville reenactments. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves. But first of all, I want to introduce someone who's really was a prime mover, if you will, of these cruises about 4 or 5 years ago. I approached him. We were friends on Facebook. We started a conversation. He knew about these other cruises we do, the fun and fitness cruises, but it's mainly water aerobics oriented cruises that also have a little to do with gentle yoga, chair yoga. They're primarily for senior citizens who participate in their local YMCAs, YWCAs, and other fitness centers. So he kind of took a chance on us. We had never done these big, high-profile cruises before, but he had faith in us because he had seen what we had done in a smaller scale. And so he gave us the green light, and he put us in touch with Joe Kenda. He let him know that we're for real. We've been doing this for 20 years now, and let's do it. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, the main reason we're here, the first person to green light these cruises, Carl Marino. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about each one of them. And this gentleman was on, the first gentleman was on our first cruise this year, I should say, in January of this year, on a ship that looked, you were on this ship looks like deja vu all over again, because it's exactly the same layout. Our cruise, by the way, a year from now, on Regal Princess from New York, is bigger and more modern, so it's a little bit different layout. Although, they have a venue very similar to this called the Vista Lounge, which we're probably going to do in the next 7.5. So anyway, so you may have seen this gentleman. In fact, almost all of you probably have seen him on the episode that was about 2 weeks ago, Wednesday night of almost 2 weeks ago, and he's a detective that gave commentary on a case that he was involved with in Colorado Springs. So let's welcome Sal Fiorillo from Colorado Springs.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm going to stand up and I don't have to sit down and talk, but as Jim said, my name is Sal Fiorillo. I retired from the Colorado Springs Police Department a couple years ago as a lieutenant, and I had the opportunity to be on an episode a couple weeks ago, and I shot a couple more that are going to be here in the future. Anyway, just a real quick bio of what I did. I spent about 30 years with the police department. I spent a lot of time working undercover in narcotics, and that episode that was shot a couple weeks ago involved my role in narcotics. After narcotics, I had an opportunity to work for Lieutenant Kenda, but it wasn't in homicide. He oversaw the major crimes unit, and we formed what we called a juvenile offender unit. Basically, it was to deal with gangs and the violent juvenile offenders. I had an opportunity to work for Lieutenant Kenda for 2 years in that capacity, and then I made the mistake of testing for sergeant, and I got promoted and had to go back to a patrol. And so I spent a few years in patrol after that as a patrol supervisor, went back to narcotics. And by the way, that was my favorite job. I spent a couple years as a supervisor in narcotics, and then I got to kind of follow in Lieutenant Kenda's footsteps, and I oversaw the homicide unit for about 4 years. And that was a very challenging and at times frustrating job. It was also very rewarding. After that, I made another mistake, and I tested, and I got promoted to lieutenant. And as Lieutenant Kenda will say, that was probably the biggest mistake he made, the biggest mistake I made. It's one thing to be a sergeant, but it's another thing to be an operator as opposed to an administrator. So I made lieutenant, and I ended up going back to Patrol Bureau, And then I ended my career working in our special operations section. I oversaw our tactical operations, the SWAT team, K9 bomb squad. And I had an opportunity to work with Brian Ritz, as all you guys know. Brian and I shared offices, or not shared an office, we were next door to each other and got to work side by side. And I don't know if Brian's in here or not, but Brian and I had a really good time working together. Brian, you know, he's kind of clean cut, real serious guy. No. Brian is, he's a practical joker. He was a whole lot of fun to work with. I don't know if Brian's in here, but so he has that serious look, but don't let him fool you. He's a practical joker, the type of guy. So anyway, I worked there for 6 years, and then decided it was time to, after about 30 years, it was time to pull the plug. But during my time in homicide and even in narcotics, I worked extensively with Larry Martin, as you guys all know. Larry and I worked a lot of cases together in homicide and narcotics, and it was a rewarding, fun career, and I don't regret a minute of it. But again, even though this is Homicide Hunters, and the best job I had was working narcotics, working undercover narcotics. You could get up in the morning, you don't have to take a shower, you don't have to comb your hair, you just put on a ball cap, wear shorts, and at times, and this was very, very difficult, I didn't like doing it, but they would send you to bars and make you drink beer. I hate doing that. I absolutely despise doing that, but you know, I'm a team player, so that's what I would do. Anyway, it's an honor to be up here with this great group of people, and also being able to share this experience with Lieutenant Kenda and Larry Martin and Brian Ritz and everybody else. So I just want to thank everybody, and I'll go ahead and pass it off to Captain Kenda.
I'm Kathy Kenda, and I am the long-suffering wife. You probably know all about me if you've read the book, so I'll pass this on to Alona.
Let me just interrupt for 1 second and say that some of you were looking for my brother earlier. You can either exchange a t-shirt or buy an extra t-shirt, so he has now arrived, sorry. And he's now arrived, and you can go into his office over there and say hi.
Hi, I'm Alona Moreno. You guys don't know me, I'm Paul's wife. And you may have seen me on a few episodes here and there, and a few more coming up, so keep watching.
She doesn't like to talk much on the microphone, obviously. I'm Carl Moreno. I was a deputy sheriff for 17 years before this. Almost didn't submit for this role, which I would have been kicking myself watching the ID channel saying, yeah, that kind of looks familiar. But my wife actually convinced me to, because I had to audition for it in Los Angeles, and I lived in San Francisco, and it's a 6-hour drive. You go down, you audition against 10,000 people who look and sound exactly like you, and it's a frustrating thing. But I want to thank her for telling me, you matched the description, please just go do it. And so here I am, because otherwise there'd be somebody else standing up here talking to you right now. I want to first off thank Joe Kenda, because none of us would be here right now if it wasn't for him and the career that he had. And I'm very grateful every day, and I make sure I always tell him that. Thanks to Jim, of course, and John for organizing all this. Special thanks to Michelle Luchetti and Michael, who put together all your swag bags and worked tirelessly to. I'm not sure Jim would be able to run this without Michelle anymore. Anyways,
That's right.
yeah, but thank you to those. Thank you to you fans. I mean, without you guys, we wouldn't be here either. And so you're fantastic. You're all like family. And I always tell everyone, once you come on the Kenda Cruise, you're no longer fans of the show. You're Kenda Cruise family. Thank all of you. I mean, and we got people that came from everywhere. I mean, last one we had several people from the UK. We had people from Australia. Even a few people from Eagle River. That's an inside joke. But anyways, thanks again. I'll pass this on.
Well, I get to be the one to follow that up. My name is Julie Small. I am the Technical Services Supervisor for the Knoxville Police Department, where most of the show is shot. I've been with the police department for 5 years. That's my day job. I get to work with the two-way radios, the in-car camera system, all the technical aspects that the police officers do. I get to support these guys every day. in the night and the evenings. Sometimes I get the opportunity to play a CSI on the show. We don't just do Homicide Hunter. I've been a medical examiner for Murder Chose Me. I've been CSI for Murder Chose Me. We've got an upcoming show called Murder Decoded. I've been a medical examiner in that for 2 episodes that'll be coming up starting the first of the year. My favorite thing is being married to this guy.
I have to try that. My name is Brian Davis. I've been with the Knoxville Police Department for about 26 years. I've done a wide variety of jobs to include patrol, organized crime, plain collision, homicide, and polygraph detail. I'm now a sergeant over all the property and evidence activities for about 56,000 items, to include evidence going back to the 50s on murder cases. How I got involved in this is, as you know, officers work extra jobs and we're constantly hustling to pay bills because, creditors like to be paid. And so we get a text one day, hey, I have a really, really easy job for you. All you have to do is stand there. I stand pretty well. I felt slightly qualified for it, so I said, sure, why not? I show up on the location and they start putting tape over my patches and tape over my back. What's going on? Well, we need you to act this scene out. Excuse me. I have no talent at all, and I can barely, I don't want to be on TV at all. And that was 6 years ago. And so about 50 episodes later, here I am. Again, it's been said before, but we really want to thank you all, the fans of the show, for being here and supporting us. And it's gone on longer than we ever dreamed it would. And again, thank you all so very much.
Hi, I'm Heather Wilson, and I have the most exciting job of anyone on the panel. I am a librarian. So I have been on Homicide. I think I've been a CSI a couple of times, and I was a jury foreman once. And like Julie said, there's some other shows in Knoxville. So, just anytime they need somebody, we're there.
We've actually filmed in your library also.
That's right. This season, it was my library. That was the Fort Casey Library. That was a lot of fun. So that's been fun for my children. My 2 youngest have been able to go see. Our 9-year-old, she watches TV now, and somebody's been stabbed to death. She's like, oh yeah, whatever, because she sat next to a stabbing victim and had lunch before. So that's a lot of fun. And yeah, I've been Adam's wife for 20 wonderful years, and so I'm going to hand this over to him.
Good afternoon, I'm Adam Wilson. I'm a Knoxville police officer. I've been a police officer at Knoxville for about 17 years. Did about 7.5 years on patrol, 2 years in a plainclothes street vice unit. That was the best 2 years, 2.5 years of my career. Super fun. I would agree with the narcotics statement, the fun stuff, that's where the fun is. Spent 5.5 years roughly in our training academy teaching new police officers how to be police officers. That's a challenge. And then the last 2.5 years, I've been a school resource officer in high schools in Knoxville. And I have really enjoyed that, being in close contact with young people and trying to make a difference in their lives. I've been on Homicide since season 2, the first season that they filmed in Knoxville. And like Brian, I got a text that said, hey, you want to be on this show called Homicide Hunter? And I was like, is the check going to clear? And so I went and did it.
And Adam got thrown in there pretty quick because if you notice, he doesn't have a southern accent. So he became the responding officer on almost every episode.
And here's how that goes. Show up on set on time, start getting your uniform all taken care of, and somebody comes up to you and says, hey, you've got lines. Okay.
And it's usually me because I want to make sure he knows them because nobody gave him the lines beforehand.
Exactly. So we get about 15 or 20 minutes to peruse what we're supposed to say and then laugh at the writers. They do an exceptional job, but they're not cops. So they don't write lines like cops talk. So
Nobody says, so what's the word on the streets? And that was written in one of our scripts once.
So typically, whoever's playing the part, whoever's doing the briefing stands there with Carl. We have a laugh together about how it's written. We decide on how that's actually gonna come out, right? Or change in the script. And then we just tell the director, this is what we're gonna do.
And our directors think that. And what's the first thing I always say? Exactly. No matter what it says in my script, that's what I say. But the writers like to try and write these things. So, what's happening inside of there today? So, what's the situation this morning? I walk up, I cross off, like, so what do we got? That's how cops talk. We don't have time. We want to know what's going on. Because, you know.
3/4 of Carl's and my conversations in our entire relationship start out. So what you got? Good stuff. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being fans of the show. It makes a huge difference. We appreciate it.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is very similar to what we did at the morning session. And I need another volunteer to run the microphone because Andrew Elkins did a great job, but he wants to take pictures of this session. So
He's tired.
and he might be tired. So okay, you'll do that. Okay, if you want to cover the starboard side like Andrew did.
Who's got the first question? And thank you. Stand up.
We've got a question right here.
So just like the morning session, please say your first name and what city you're from, and we're going to try to kind of alternate, bounce back and forth between port side and starboard side.
Okay, hey, I guess I'm over here. Of course, I'm Bob from Rio Rancho, which is the Albuquerque Metro. And big shout out to all you guys. Love your show and just enjoy it so much. And if I can, I'd like to give an extra shout out to Carl and Ilona. You guys do so much great volunteer work when you're off the set. Got to see you guys 6 weeks ago in Albuquerque for the 1082 charity event there. And it's greatly appreciated. The guys there just love you. But
We had a fantastic time as well, meeting everyone.
fantastic. But hey, you know, like, okay, hey, there we go. Down here. Okay, there we go. Okay, I figured my voice was too big, I didn't need a mic. But at least that's what the wife says. But aside from, I wanted to thank you in case anyone didn't hear me. Thanking them. Carl and Malona do a lot of volunteer work for charity, and it is greatly appreciated. So I believe they really do deserve a round of applause for that. But of course, now it's up to you if you want to share it or not. For some of us that know you, we know the story, but if anyone ever gets the chance to be on the set with you guys on Homicide Hunter, there is some etiquette. It's goes with set chairs. I didn't know if you want to share that or not.
Don't ever sit in a chair with somebody else's name on it. We'll just leave it at that.
Good call.
It's pretty common sense, you would think. If the chair doesn't have your name on it, you don't sit. Anyways, it's a long story, but it's a kind of funny.
Yeah, it was actually posted on Facebook. So, by the way, just couple little plugs here. If you, almost all of you are already, but if not, join Carl's group, which has 25,000 members. It's the Homicide Hunter group, and join my group, which is Homicide Hunter Discussion, which only has about 6,000 members. But what I started a lot later to read it, and also. If you're not already Facebook friends with Andrew Elkins, send him a friend request because his pictures are out of this world. He'll post dozens and dozens of pictures of this cruise and previous cruises. They're really top-notch professional quality. This lady here has a question.
Hi, my name is Mariel Ward, and I'm from Salt Lake, Utah. I wanted to know, beyond that we're fans and we keep the ratings going, what is your thoughts of our fascination with the topic?
I don't think we care. We're just glad you are.
There's never a time.
Well,
Yes.
Actually, my wife was a huge ID fan before I was ever on the ID channel. I didn't know the ID channel was. So she's one of you. She's an ID addict as well, which is kind of straight now that I'm on Homicide Hunter.
Okay, so no one ever thought, why are they so interested in murder?
Well, I just know that in the beginning, I told Joe that if they could get this to ID or somebody like that it would go. And he said, no, they won't. And I said, look, I said, my mom used to read true crime magazines. I said, Ellery Queen and all of that. I said, you are going to have tons of women fans because the women are the ones that buy the murder mysteries. They do all of that stuff. They watch it on TV. They read Ellery Queen. They read all this stuff. And if you can get it to a program, you'll have tons of women fans. And yeah, they will. Yeah, they will. Okay. And that's what happened.
I guess we see what the color does. You know, I think it's a very normal human nature to be fascinated with things that are deeply meaningful. And what is more deeply meaningful than the loss of someone in a violent way? And then the mystery of how we solve that. So I just look at it as it's human nature. Why did a number of us become police officers? It wasn't for the boredom. It wasn't for the pay. It may have been for driving fast and carrying a gun, that kind of stuff. But for real, there's a curiosity and a fascination that is human nature, earth-wise.
And you know on TV that on the news, if it leads, or if it bleeds, it leads. Right. Those are the first things.
We have a question over on the starboard side.
I'm Becky from Wisconsin, and my question is actually for Carl. I'm curious how you went from being a police officer to an actor. Like, how did that transition occur?
I did it the old-fashioned way, like most actors do. I answered an ad on Craigslist. and I say that jokingly, but that is the honest-to-God truth. I moved out to California. Actually, I want to shout out to my cousins over here. I don't know if you've met the two Carls. I'm Carl number 3. There's Carl number 1, Carl number 2. And my cousin Anita, if you haven't spoken with her yet, don't worry, she'll get to you. But yeah, I moved out to California. I used to visit them all the time. My family lived down in San Jose. And I was tired of the cold. I was going through a bad breakup and stuff. And he convinced me to move out to California. And didn't really have a whole lot going on out there at the time. So I was happy looking through Craigslist one day, and I noticed that an ad that they were looking for former or current police officers to play background police officers on this brand new TV show that was filming up in San Francisco called Trauma. And it was the show that replaced ER. And I'm like, well, that's kind of cool. They're going to pay me to do that? And I've never seen something. I didn't want to act. The same way. I didn't want to, don't make me act. I'll just stand there, run back and forth in front of the camera, whatever you need. But so it was a 3-day job. And I called up and I said, yeah, I'd like to do it. Great, we'll book you for the 3 days. Well, I started working for a private investigator at the same time, and I had a case that came up that was going to interfere with one of those days. Called casting back up, said I can't work one of the days, and they're like, well, we can't use you if you can't do all 3 days for continuity. I'm like, that's fine, just cancel it, no big deal. It was just kind of a farce thing anyways. Private eye thing got canceled, called them back, it's like, yeah, I can do all 3 days now, and they're like, well, we already filled all the police officer spots, do you want to be a paramedic? And I was like, well, not really. And she's like, trust me, you're going to be doing the exact same thing in just a different uniform. And so it turns out I was lucky it was a show about paramedics. And once they picked up the show, they called us all back. And one day I ended up getting lines on the show. And I didn't realize what a big deal that was, getting lines on a network TV show. Until they were putting the microphone on me, and all my background friends were like, dude, they're putting a mic on you? I'm like, yeah. Don't you know what that means? I'm like, yeah, it means I'm going to talk. Well, it also meant they opened a chair for me next to Cliff Curtis and all the other stars. I got a piece of the trailer. I went from making $80 to making $2,500 for the day. I ate in a different line than all my friends, which of course I rubbed into them, even though I went back to the background the next day. But the next episode after that, Jeffrey Reiner, the director-producer, realized that I could actually handle lines, so he gave them to me again. Episode after that, he gave it to me again, gave me a character name, and made me part of the cast of the show, which then opened up a lot of doors. I had agents calling me, when you're a cast member on a network TV show, you don't have an agent, would you like an agent? And, one thing led to another, and I actually started to enjoy the acting. It's something I never wanted to do, but worked very hard at it, and eventually got this, and been going strong for 8 seasons, and now it sounds like a 9th, so.
All right. We have a question over here.
Hi, my name is Kathy Sullivan. Did you mention something about Eagle River?
Eagle River?
I lived in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, many years ago, which is, I don't know, it's Wisconsin. Anyway, I have a couple questions. Carl, you're a non-smoker?
Oh, I said, normally I answer that question before anybody asks, and I forgot to today, but I do not smoke cigarettes.
Okay, so then how do you fake when it's a show where it shows Joe?
Well, if you ask my director, he says I don't do it very well. But I've gotten better. He says he's been trying to teach me to smoke for 7 years, basically. But I think I've gotten better at it. But they're herbal cigarettes. There's no nicotine in them. I do inhale them. They taste and smell horrible, but they don't hurt when you inhale them.
I just couldn't figure out what's in your thumb smoking. You know,
And I get that question every single day. So normally I say it right off the bat. But
I'd like to see, I'm a nurse practitioner and have been for 35 years, also served in the military. And so for those vets in the room, I thank you for your service. I have been working as a nurse practitioner for many years. I won't give my age or years, but many years. And there's always been, in my experience, a high level of interaction between police officers and nurses. You know, in the ER or whatever. And there are a lot of nurses that marry police officers and police officers that marry nurses. So it's a pipe dream, but I'd like to see a better role or better or enlarged role of what real nurses do in the emergency rooms. And we just really see nurses when Joe comes up and says, "Can I speak to a patient?" And I think that's real life now, because nursing is very different now than it was, you know, in the 1970s. So I would like to see that if you guys have any influence. And I have.
We don't.
Well, you might throw it out to somebody. I have become so involved in the show that I sit there and I'll say, "You idiot, why are you standing there? You're gonna get shot. Move over. So my husband won't watch it with me because I'm jumping all over the place. And I yell at all of you.
A question from the other side? Okay, do we have a question from over here? Okay, here we go. Right over here.
Hi, I'm Christopher. I'm from Maryland with my wife.
There you are, Christopher. I've been looking for you.
I know. Thank you, Carl.
That's another inside joke.
Carl, when you do that special vision and everyone disappears, do you have a problem bringing them back? And don't try it on me right now.
But they usually come back within 30 seconds. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Carl.
Haven't had a problem yet. And if you don't know, we call that the Sherlock moment on the script. I know people call it Ken Division and other things and stuff, but it's on the script they actually write Sherlock moment. And he's right. It actually means we can go home because it's the last shot we do at 4 a.m. on a night shoot is the Sherlock moment. So once we're into that, we're about ready to go.
This question is for Kathy. Hey Kathy, I'm Ryan from Kansas City, and I just wanted to ask you, do you have any words of wisdom for being a wife of a homicide detective? For my wife, she's a wife of a homicide detective. How you know those years and kind of kept your sanity and maybe some pearls of wisdom for her?
I think that being the wife of a homicide detective and a police officer is about the same as being a spouse of military. You can't worry about your spouse. You go on, you live your life, you raise the kids, you do the dishes, you go to work, you clean the house, or whatever you do. You cannot worry about them 24 hours a day. There will be times when you kind of think, when you're having a drink alone and think, oh my God, where are they? But on the whole, you go on with your life. And then they come home, and it's great. Now, when they come home, they try to take over everything, which you've been doing forever. And you say, no. You know, other than that, so my deal was I worked part-time as a nurse. I took care of the kids. I took care of the house. I cut the grass, or the kids did. But the cars were his. I said, don't let me run out of gas. I am not taking the car to the car dealership. because they all say, oh, look at the blonde. She doesn't know what she's talking about. You need all of this stuff. No, all I need is an oil change. No, you need all this. So the cars were toast. I took care of everything else. But like I said, you cannot worry about them 24 hours a day. So you just don't. You live your life. You keep going. And as far as what they say about the nursing, I told them that they need to have the other Kathy in one say, hey, have her in scrubs and say, hey, goodbye, I'm going to work. You just got home. See you later. Or, hey, we're both going to work. We'll see you later for dinner. So hopefully they bring a little bit more of the nursing into the show. I don't know if they will, but I put in my 2 cents.
The next episode we're filming, I saw the script and it does exactly that. So, yes. Yep. So you're going to be happy. All the nurses are going to be happy. But it's going to feature a lot more of that.
So we're here, Bonnie from Tucson, Arizona. I have, first of all, would like to say all of you up there who have served in the capacity of a police officer or a related profession within that particular function, I'd like to say thank you. It hurts my heart today to see what in so many factions of our country seem to be aggression toward our police officers and our beautiful boys in blue. And that hurts my heart a great deal. And I wondered how you all tend to deal with that.
Well, it hurts our heart too, actually. So policing is one of those things that is a fine balance between community relations and law enforcement. Enforcement is ugly sometimes, and it's not ugly because police officers make it ugly. It's typically ugly because somebody having the law enforced upon them makes it ugly. We have a double responsibility. We have to be vigilant, recognize crimes, develop probable cause, and enforce the law, while at the same time maintaining a balance of a relationship with the community that both earns us respect and doesn't get us killed. And so when we see that imbalance and people for no reason are hating the uniform, because they don't hate us, they don't know us. They don't know what we do when we go home and love on our little dog or love on our kids. They don't see all that. All they see is a uniform and a badge, and that is the devil to them. And so it hurts our heart like it hurts yours.
After a while, you understand that you took this job or in this profession not for glory, not for anything selfish, but you took it for a reason to help people to serve in some capacity that you can give back to your community, that you feel, I should do this. I want to do this. But understand, in law enforcement, what we are doing, our primary function is to protect each and every one of your rights. It's not to put people in jail. It's not to chase down the bad guys. It's to make sure that you are okay. It's to make sure that your loved one can get safely to school. It's that you can live a normal, free life without someone imposing harm or ill upon you. And so when we encounter negativity, where we encounter folks that are hostile toward us, technically that's part of the job, and it is. And if you can't deal with that, don't do it. If you can't be cussed at, if you can't be spit at, if you can't have people call you names that you'd rather not hear, don't do the job. And so I was in here earlier today, and Joe said something about a dark, gallows sense of humor, if you recall him saying that. And that permeates his profession. If we were to tell you jokes, they would cut my mic. Because you would be shocked, appalled, and vaguely laughing. And that's how you deal with it. And then when you get done with it, you decompress and you come home, and if you're lucky, you have a beautiful wife to come home to, or a beautiful spouse. and they help you through that process. Like Kathy was saying, you know, we deal with that with our families, we deal with that with our children, we deal with that with our loved ones. And without them, I don't think we can do that.
My question is for Sal. I'm in front of you. I saw Detective Ritz sneak in. I think he's in the back there.
Yes, he is. He's at the
He
bar.
told us he's not the sweet and innocent gentleman that he portrays on TV, that he's a practical joker, and I wonder if you could share some stories with us about some things that have happened.
I would love to share a lot of stories about Detective Ritz. But I have to say one thing. He is a expert marksman. And he can hit me from about 400 yards out. So I may have to, I probably should, there he is, I see him back there. He's giving me a look right now, he's giving me the finger. So I've been to the range with Detective Ritz, and like I said, 400 yards out, he can probably hit me. So, but no, he's you see him on the show, you see him up here, and he's dressed really sharp, and he's got that professional image, and he is. He's very professional, but he's also a pretty good practical. He can take a practical joke, and Brian, you can dish it out too. I've been the victim of some of those practical jokes. Like I said, we had offices next to each other in both of our last assignments, and Brian was a lot of fun to work with. We did we had a good time, but yeah, he's not the innocent, clean-cut, serious guy, right, Brian? Okay, I have other people that would disagree with you on that, but no, but Brian is a great guy, and he's great to work with. But Brian is a BB in a box. Anybody work with people like that? They're like a BB in a box, they're bouncing off the wall, I don't know if he drinks too much coffee or what, I don't know what he does, but he is a BB in the box. He wears me out sometimes. He's running around. I get tired. I have to go sit down because I'm tired just watching him work. So I can't share a lot of stories because, like I said, I 400 yards out, right, Brian?
I wanted to ask a question that I asked two cruises ago that was really fascinating, because I was on the set and was an extra in an episode of Homicide Hunter about a year or two ago. Anyway, I was really impressed with the safety procedures on the set. They have a 100% safety record. So I'd like to ask them to talk a little bit about safety on the set a little bit.
Well, we're doubly mindful about safety in this. We work for a company other than the police department, but all of the gear and all of the cars and everything, that belongs to the city of Knoxville. So when you see us in a police car and we're driving up, or we're skidding to a stop, or we're in a pursuit, all of that's really very well controlled. Brian is a driving instructor, so we have the benefit of having an expert driver on staff. But if we crash a car or destroy something with city property, it's entirely likely that our chief of police will say, "All right, hope that was a good run, you're done," and pull that extra job from us.
And it would be terrible for the show to lose the officers in their equipment, because that's their expertise is what makes the show as realistic as it is.
So on occasion, and several seasons back, we used a lot of real firearms. Most of the firearms that you saw on the show were actual firearms. And there's a number of us that are firearms instructors and basically take charge of clearing those weapons, making sure that they're safe before we go into any kind of filming situation where we have weapons drawn or we're doing anything like that. If you'll notice more recently, if you know anything about guns, you'll see that we're using airsoft guns. And they shoot it in such a way that you don't necessarily see that it's an airsoft gun, because the airsoft guns that shoot the little plastic BBs, those are so realistic looking that The right camera angle keeps you from knowing. That's some of the safety measures that we take. There are times still when there'll be actual firearms on set. We double check those, clear those, make sure that there's no rounds in them or around them, and we do what we do.
Okay, next question. Oh, Brian's going to say
I was going to
something.
add up, one thing that adds into the safety factors, we film in residential locations and in, parking lots of convenience stores at late night, and sometimes not too great neighborhoods. And so when you see a guy running out of a convenience store with a ski mask, holding a weapon, and you're just driving down the road, what do you think just happened? Oh, they're filming a TV show. No, people call in all the time, hey, the 7-Eleven's getting robbed, or I think my neighbor's getting stabbed to death. And so part of the safety brief was we actually call into 911 and let them know, hey, we're killing someone at this address. For TV. And so they don't dispatch calls or patrolmen to answer that attempted murder call when it's just a TV show. And so you're talking about safety issues. We don't want officers responding to the scene with blue lights and siren for something that they don't need to respond to. So all that planning and all the safety briefs that we do are make the show as realistic as it can. Sometimes people can't tell the difference. We actually threw a dummy off a parking garage, and someone called in, oh God, someone committed suicide. Now the dummy died, but we're okay. So those are things that people don't think about when you're shooting any kind of show or any reenactment. Is it looks realistic, not on TV, but in real life. So that's all goes into it.
Another thing, we also have a safety officer on set because we have a bunch of police officers in these not so nice neighborhoods. And unfortunately, police officers aren't as safe as they once were in today's society. To the point where, if you saw the episode, my wife was wearing a uniform, which she was very happy, by the way. And she was just sad that she didn't get to draw a weapon in that episode. But I had to remind her she's not walking around in a costume with props. If people see her on the street, they're going to think she's a police officer, and you need to keep your head on a swivel and pay attention. Because while she feels like she's dressed as an actor, nobody else knows that. And so we do have a safety officer just to watch our backs while we're filming as well.
Okay, do we have other questions? While you're thinking of a question, let me just mention a couple of things. One of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation on the very first day is this is the start of a conversation. When you see these gentlemen and ladies around the ship, and then tomorrow afternoon when we're in Cabo, buy them a drink, and then they'll tell you some real stories that are not fit to be told when there's cameras running and things like that in a public forum. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, other questions? You're hiding behind the pillar. Okay.
Actually, before she asked that, Bob was talking about the charity work that Alona and I do. And I wanted to mention a couple of Kenda Cruisers that couldn't be here this time. Josh and Michelle Gatkin, who have been on all the Kenda Cruises. And those that have been on the other ones know Michelle. Paul's Michelle, always, the happiest person around, always everywhere. She's been in a real battle lately. And they were booked on this, they had the flights and everything, they had to cancel. But unfortunately, earlier this year, Josh found out that he had cancer as well. And his cancer has progressed terribly also. And they did want to say hi to all those people that know them and everything. But because of what they're going through and what inspirations they are to us, my wife and I are running the Boston Marathon in honor of them. And we're raising money for the Multiple Myeloma Foundation. I know that there's several people out here in the audience right now that have already given, and thank you very much. It's our goals we're trying to raise $20,000, and so if any of you get a chance to check it out, it's posted on Facebook. It's the money goes directly to the charity. It's a cancer charity, and it means the world to us, just because what those two are going through, and how sad we are that they can't be here. And it's completely tax deductible as well. But anyways, thank you all.
I'm Corey from Aurora, Colorado. Yay, Aurora! Carl, what's your favorite episode that you have done with this?
There's quite a few of them. I'll say my favorite ones are the ones that my wife are in, of course, sitting here right next to me. But there's been a couple. The one, Joe's first case, where Joe got to prove all the other detectives wrong. I know it's a fan favorite, and just at the end, being able to look up and look directly in the camera and smile too, which is something you never break that wall on TV. So it was kind of interesting to do that. But that was a fun one to do, just to progress how he solved that and prove those old guys wrong. And also the recent one is where Joe gets shot at, and when he first became a police officer, and that one I got to act. I'm my favorite actor. Well, I also got to smash the guy's face on a counter too, and that was kind of fun. But I actually got to act a little more, and being a detective on a TV show, a lot of times it's the same repetitive questions. So what happened next? All right, can you call if you hear anything? All right, so what happened next? So that one I got to actually act and have some action and stuff. So that was a lot of fun to shoot, even though I know it's not a fun one to watch probably.
Okay, let's maybe one or two more questions. Go ahead.
Danny from New Orleans. This is for the actors. How many hours do you have to put in for one episode, and how long does it take to tape a 43-minute episode? I know it's quite a bit of time.
Well, I think we only get 17 minutes of it, probably, for the recreations, but it takes 5 or 6 10-hour days for each episode. And that's just our part of it. That doesn't count all the interviews, the B-roll, and everything else that goes into it.
Yeah, typically it's 1 or 2 crime scene days. That's the days that we play officers. And those 2 days, it's either 2 10-hour days or a 10-hour day and a 5-hour day. It varies, but it's, at least one day during that filming week will be crime scene day, and that's when we get involved.
And they film all 10 hours. But they try not to go over, because that's when overtime starts and it gets really expensive. And our big joke while we're filming, because once you start to film during the day, things are kind of going slow. Everyone's drinking their coffee, they're setting the lights and everything, and the director, photographer, and the director are having these long conversations of these beautiful shots. So the joke is, the first scene of the day, we're shooting Casablanca. The last scene of the day, we're filming Cops.
So one of the things I found out on other cruises, there's actually several different versions depending on the country. So, for example, in Great Britain, it's 51 minutes because they only have a maximum by law of 9 minutes because it's the BBC, so it's partially funded by the government. So some of what might end up on the cutting room floor, they still have to shoot it because it's going to go, and that's one of the reasons why it might take 5 weeks to 5 months for it to reach Great Britain and other countries. And not to mention, and then other countries it takes even longer because of the dubbing or the subtitles. Anyway,
so everyone out there that's complaining that you haven't got the latest episode yet, you're getting more than everyone else is. So you're getting a bonus.
That's right. That's right. And some of my friends who are like bit parts on the show, they say, "Oh, I ended up on the cutting room floor." It's like, "Oh, but you're going to be big in Britain." Probably your part may have made it into that other cut. What is that? Another 8 minutes of additional material. It's almost like you see a movie, you get the director's extended cut. Okay, so who has the next question?
Hello, I'm Eileen from Iowa, and I have a question for Kathy. I admire you a great deal for all you've been through. And I don't think any of you would be here without her wisdom throughout the years. You just mentioned a show you didn't like, so what's your favorite?
My favorite show was the one of the 2 young black girls whose mother was murdered, and they both said, as adults, how much they appreciated the police in general and the homicide detectives, and that was my favorite show.
Hi, I'm Mary from Washington State. First of all, Carl, I'm sorry I cut you off in the buffet line. And Kathy, I was just wondering, I know that the show where Joe came home with the blood all over him was probably super scary, but I was wondering, what was the scariest time that you remember?
I think the scariest time that I can remember was the time when he called me at 8 o'clock in the morning and said that he was going to go arrest this perpetrator. And I said, okay. And then he didn't call me back to say that he had arrested him or that he was in custody or anything. So from 8 o'clock in the morning till 1 o'clock the next morning, I didn't know what was going on. So the kids were out of the house by then, because this was the time when I told him, I said, Kenda, I can't wait for you to come home anymore. And I had had several drinks. And I said, you either quit or you send the patrolmen and the sergeants out. You are now a lieutenant, you don't need to go, and I know that. So you either send them out or you quit, because I am not waiting for you to come home anymore. And this was just in the beginning when you had cell phones, but they didn't have a cell phone. He could have called me at some point, because I knew he was somewhere in some building at some point that he could have called me and said, hey, I'm fine. Click. He didn't. And that was his big mistake.
Hello, my name is Mike. We're from Indiana and Ohio, Amish country. I'm a retired cop, and I'd just like to say that I am extremely glad to see shows that are bringing in the actual people doing the job, because they understand, and the people that write and then try to portray, they need to know what it's really like, and we need to know that we are real people, intelligent, we're able to control society and ourselves. Thank you.
I think it's great that all the policemen around here are retired. They made it.
Just a few more.
Almost retired.
Hi, this is Brent from Maryland. I've got a procedural question for you. I was watching an episode. There's a bad guy in a house. You think he's armed. You're not sure whether he's going to fight or surrender quickly. You've got two detectives, two uniformed officers. The detectives put on bulletproof vests. The officers, the uniformed officers didn't. And it seemed to me maybe you're saving money by cutting down the vests, or maybe they're tougher.
Their vests were underneath their shirts.
Okay.
Good catch, though.
All right, so we're going to take a 15-minute break, what we'll do after that is Joe's still signing autographs, so we're just going to have Brian Ritz speak by himself for about probably 10 minutes, and then if when the line dies down, then we'll invite Joe to come participate in the conversation. Some of you wonderful, nice people have volunteered to help out a little bit. This is your chance. We need all of these chairs put back in that corner next to the tall tables. Let's give our panel a big round of applause. They did a great job.
Save the drink for somebody.